Good morning, students. As now we have entered the Victorian period, we have already discussed pre-Raphaelite movement in our earlier video. In this video, we are going to talk about realism, which is one of the most important literary movements, you can say, in Victorian era. Alright, so the previous age was Romantic age, where we have seen that William Wordsworth and S.T. Coleridge are seeking an ideal world. They even established a utopian society. Yes, it was a dream of S.T. Coleridge, Robert Southey, William Wordsworth to establish a utopian society where everyone was treated equal and where there is no difference between rich and poor. And with that aim, they created a new world in the Lake District of England. So they were sort of driven by the theories of idealism. The same way we had Mahatma Gandhi in India, who was the idealist person who wanted all the peoples to stay united and live in peace and harmony. But on the opposite of it, we have Jawaharlal Nehru, who never believed in idealism, who believed in realism, who believed in the reality of life. So Jawaharlal Nehru was realist, Mahatma Gandhi was an idealist. You can also be an idealist or realist. For instance, I am a sort of idealist person. I also believe that the reality is not what the eyes see. The reality is first made in mind, and through our mind we form the reality. Through our actions we form the reality. If we have positive mindset, then we have positive reality. If we have negative mindset, we have negative reality. So that is what I think. As an idealist person, if I have to write any work, I would write in a way which will encourage positivity, peace, or you can say which will encourage the improvement in the world, in the society. The same way a realist person look at the life in a practical way, and he makes the decision based on what he is seeing around him. Now in literature we have to correlate these terms like realism, idealism, naturalism, or surrealism. A lot of terms, isms are there in literature, and we have to relate into the literature by associating with the works that have already published in the history of English literature. So after the Romantic age came the Victorian age, and this particular Victorian age was dominated by industrialization. People started going to the factories, they started working for long hours, 12 hours, 14 hours in the factories, and a lot of human exploitation was there, a lot of child exploitation, child labor was there, and this realism came out of, you can say, outburst for all that exploitation was going around during the Victorian period. You see, we have Bleak House, Dombey and Sons, and Oliver Twist. All these novels more or less talk about child exploitation during the Victorian period. These novels are showing the 19th century or Victorian period, and from here we can go back to Plato. The Plato who says that art is an imitation, or art is a mimesis. So it was Plato who said art is an imitation, and here also we are seeing that realism is some sort of imitation of reality. So can you say that realism or imitation both are same thing? If so, then Plato was right. Plato was right that art is just an imitation, but it is not so. There is a difference between imitation and realism. You see, whenever you talk about imitation, there are elements of creativity or abstract ideas when you are talking about imitation. But realism is not imitation. Realism is showing the reality without having any you can say elements of style, elements of abstract ideas. Realism is the transparent reality. In imitation we try to stylize the art, but in realism we just show the reality as it is. Just look at this picture made by Leonardo da Vinci, that is of the famous Mona Lisa, painting of Mona Lisa. See here how realistic this painting look like. There is no artificialness. The simple plain truth as it is. There is no elements of style. There is no elements of creativity. The way the artist looked at the picture, he created the same picture. So this is what realism all about, away from artificiality. So in this video we are going to discuss all the writers that are associated with this mode of writing, realism, and we are also going to look at the points that are important from UGC NET perspective. But before we continue our lecture on realism, if you are one of those students who are preparing for UGC NET examination or GATE examination in English literature, then you can simply check out our study material from our official website limitlessliterature.com. You can check the link in the description below to know more about our study material. Now without any further delay, let's continue our discussion on realism in English literature. So as we have discussed in our previous videos that English people used to borrow a lot of things from outside, from other European countries. For instance, you can say Age of Reason came from France. Romantic period, St. Coleridge, Wordsworth were influenced by German philosopher. And the same way we have Victorian period, who was also some sort of influenced by other French, you can say French or German countries. Then we have literary theory, the whole subject literary theory, Jacques Derrida, or you can say Carl Gustav Jung, Jacques Lacan, Sigmund Freud, Simon de Beauvoir. All the theorists were not of Britain. They were from outside, and Britishers borrowed everything from other European countries. The same way we have realism. This realism also came from outside. It was in French, where the particular mode of writing style, the realism, began. It were the French writers like Honoré de Balzac or Gustave Le Bon who first began writing the works associated with this particular writing style. And in British literature, we have George Eliot, who came up with the first work, which is Middlemarch, that set an example for other American and British writers. So the list of authors from British and American literature includes George Eliot, Charles Dickens, Henry James, George Kissing, Arnold Bennett, and George Murray. The works of all these writers fall under the category of realism. The first three writers from the slide which I have discussed just now, George Eliot, Henry James, and Charles Dickens. All these three writers are very much important from UGC NET perspective. Every year there is 2 to 3 questions are coming from these 2 to 3 writers. So at least 1 or 2 questions every year come from these 3 writers. So you have to go through all the works written by all these 3 writers, especially George Eliot and Charles Dickens. So I hope you are getting to understood what is realism. In order to know more about the writing style realism, you may have to go through the works of Charles Dickens, the novels of Charles Dickens. I have read his A Tale of Two Cities. Actually, he used to write a lot of voluminous books. He was never into writing small books, 200 pages, 300 pages. It was not like that. He was into writing voluminous books because it was only the books at that period of time which was sort of entertainment for people. So if you give a voluminous book to the reader, he keeps on reading it for many weeks, and that is how he stay entertained during the Victorian period. So if you want to understand, you can go through the works of Charles Dickens or George Eliot's Middlemarch. That is also a voluminous book. And it is also important to understand that realism is nothing like a literary movement. Yes, it began in Victorian age. It was a sort of, you can say, the writing style. It is not a literary movement. It is a writing style. Even today, if you write something which is realist in nature, then you will be called a writer who is associated with realism. So realism in English literature is not a particular literary movement. It is sort of writing style. Alright, so you have to just remember that it began in Victorian period. It was influenced by French writers, and then it came in Britain and America. Henry James was the writer. This is what all you have to remember from this, you can say, particular literary movement, realism. Alright, so this is what all I have to share in this video. I hope you found the video worth your time. That's it for this video. Thank you.